Leon Russell is often remembered as one of those rare musicians who seem to exist outside of time, shaping the sound of multiple eras without ever fully belonging to any of them. Born Claude Russell Bridges, he built a reputation as a pianist, songwriter, and producer whose influence quietly ran through rock, soul, country, and gospel music. Yet despite his towering contributions, he never quite became the household name many believed he deserved to be. His story is often surrounded by myths of disappearance and reinvention, and even decades later, listeners still ask how someone so central to modern music history could remain so understated. Part of the mystery comes from his personality, part from his choices, and part from the emotional struggles he carried privately, away from the spotlight that constantly tried to define him. A small town, beginning with unexpected struggles. Leon Russell was born in Lawton, Oklahoma in 1942, a place far removed from the glittering world of Los Angeles studios where he would later make history. From birth, he faced physical challenges due to a spinal injury that affected his right side and limited the use of several fingers. Instead of discouraging him, this difficulty seemed to deepen his connection to music. He found comfort and expression in the piano at a very young age, learning by ear and developing an intuitive style that would later become his signature. His childhood was marked by determination and quiet focus rather than attention-seeking ambition. Even as a boy, he showed signs of someone who didn't simply want to play music, but to understand it deeply, as though it were a language he was destined to speak fluently. Early musical curiosity and Tulsa's influence. As a teenager, Leon Russell immersed himself in the growing Tulsa music scene, where rhythm and blues, country, and gospel blended into a vibrant local sound. He didn't limit himself to one instrument, instead exploring piano, saxophone, trumpet, and other brass instruments, building a broad musical foundation that would later make him invaluable in studio work. He performed in clubs while still underage, sometimes using identification tricks just to be near the music he loved. In Tulsa, he joined local groups and developed a reputation as a naturally gifted musician who could adapt to any style. This period was not about fame, but about immersion. Every performance, every jam session, and every late-night set contributed to shaping a musician who could think beyond genre boundaries and anticipate the needs of other artists, breaking into Los Angeles and the studio world. When Leon Russell moved to Los Angeles, he entered a highly competitive environment where only the most adaptable musicians survived. He quickly became part of the legendary group of session players often referred to as the Wrecking Crew, musicians who played on countless hit recordings while rarely receiving public recognition. In studios, Leon's piano work stood out for its emotional depth and rhythmic boldness. He contributed to recordings for major artists across genres, including rock bands, pop singers, and even orchestral pop productions. His ability to move seamlessly between styles made him one of the most in-demand session musicians of his time. Although he was shaping some of the most iconic music of the era, he remained largely invisible to the public, a creative force operating behind the curtain of mainstream fame. Songwriting breakthroughs and the Joe Cocker era. Leon Russell eventually stepped forward from the background and began shaping his own identity as a songwriter and arranger. His collaboration with Joe Cocker marked a turning point, especially through the groundbreaking Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, where Russell acted as musical director. The tour was chaotic, energetic, and deeply influential, bringing together a large ensemble of musicians in a traveling performance experience unlike anything seen before. Leon co-wrote and arranged material that helped define Cocker's sound during this period, blending gospel energy with rock intensity. Despite the tour's success, the aftermath created tension and emotional distance between collaborators, as the intensity of the project left little room for stability. Still, it cemented Russell's reputation as someone who could not only perform music, but architect entire sonic experiences. Solo identity and the rise of A Song for You. In 1970, Leon Russell released his self-titled solo album, marking the beginning of a more personal artistic chapter. Among its standout compositions was A Song for You, a deeply emotional piece that would go on to become one of the most covered songs in modern music history. Artists across generations, from soul singers to pop icons, interpreted the song in their own styles, reinforcing its universal appeal. Russell's solo work reflected a blend of vulnerability and sophistication, revealing a songwriter capable of capturing both intimacy and grandeur. During this period, he began to gain recognition not just as a collaborator but as an artist in his own right. However, even as his reputation grew, he remained reluctant to fully embrace the machinery of fame, preferring the creative process over public attention. Commercial success and the tightrope era. By the early 1970s, Leon Russell achieved mainstream visibility with albums like Carney, which included the hit Tightrope. The song's unusual structure and circus-like atmosphere reflected Russell's willingness to experiment rather than conform to commercial expectations. It resonated with audiences precisely because it felt different from typical radio music of the time. This period represented one of the few moments when Russell's name appeared prominently in the charts, yet even then, he resisted the traditional role of a pop star. His success was significant but never fully aligned with industry expectations. He was celebrated, yet still somewhat distant from the conventional image of celebrity, preferring to let the music speak louder than promotional narratives or public appearances. Shelter Records and creative independence, Leon Russell's desire for artistic control led him to co-found Shelter Records, a label that became home to several influential artists. Through this platform, he worked closely with musicians like J.J. Cale and played a role in the early development of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. The label represented Russell's vision of a space where artists could create without excessive industry interference. However, managing creative freedom alongside business demands proved challenging. Differences in artistic direction and operational decisions occasionally created friction between partners. Despite these tensions, Shelter Records left a lasting impact on the music industry by supporting artists who valued authenticity over commercial polish. Russell's involvement demonstrated his commitment not just to his own music but to fostering an environment where other musicians could thrive. Gospel influence and emotional depth. A defining feature of Leon Russell's music was his deep connection to gospel traditions, which influenced both his performance style and emotional expression. Albums like Leon Live showcased this influence through powerful arrangements that blended church-like energy with rock instrumentation. His piano playing often carried a spiritual intensity, as though each performance was both a concert and a personal testimony. This fusion of sacred and secular sound helped distinguish him from many of his contemporaries. It also reflected his belief that music should carry emotional truth rather than surface-level entertainment. Gospel was not just an influence but a foundation that shaped how he approached melody, rhythm, and performance, giving his work a sense of depth that resonated across different audiences and generations. The outsider image and life on the road. Despite his success, Leon Russell often appeared more comfortable as a traveler than a traditional celebrity. He spent much of his life moving between cities, studios, and tour stops, rarely settling into the expectations of Hollywood living. His appearance, demeanor, and lifestyle choices contributed to an image of someone who resisted conformity at every level. Some industry figures viewed him as unpredictable or difficult, not because of hostility, but because he refused to compromise his creative instincts. This independence sometimes led to professional friction, yet it also preserved the integrity of his work. Russell seemed more interested in musical exploration than in maintaining a public persona, which contributed to the perception that he occasionally disappeared, when in reality, he was simply stepping away from the spotlight to protect his creative space. Collaborations with music icons and later recognition. Leon Russell maintained relationships with some of the most influential musicians in history, including George Harrison and Elton John. Harrison's respect for Russell led to his inclusion in major live performances, such as the Concert for Bangladesh, where Russell delivered a powerful, unforgettable set. Elton John, who openly admired Russell's piano style and songwriting, later collaborated with him on the album The Union, reconnecting Russell with a broader audience in his later years. Around this time, Cher also expressed admiration for Russell's emotional depth as a songwriter, and discussions about his influence resurfaced in interviews and retrospectives, highlighting how many artists quietly drew inspiration from him. These late career acknowledgments helped reframe his legacy, showing that his influence had never truly faded, even when he was less visible publicly. Conclusion: a legacy that never truly disappeared. Leon Russell's story is not one of disappearance, but of quiet persistence in a world that often demands constant visibility. He shaped the sound of multiple decades through songwriting, performance, and collaboration, yet remained resistant to the structures of fame that surrounded him. His life was marked by both extraordinary creative achievement and deeply personal struggles that he rarely shared publicly. What makes his